Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a really crucial topic in our Software Engineering Explainer, Chapter 13, which is all about security engineering. We're going to explore a massive historical shift in how we actually build systems. You see, before the 1990s, software engineering was mostly focused on just preventing accidental bugs, basic logic errors. But then the widespread adoption of the internet completely changed the game forever. We suddenly had to pivot. Our focus really had to expand to defending systems against malicious, technically skilled attackers who are actively trying to exploit networked systems on purpose. It's a fascinating evolution, and it really forms the foundation for everything we're going to cover today.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a welcome to security engineering, then break down the CIA security triad, explore the 3 levels of security, and go over some core security terminology you definitely need to know. After that, we'll look at threats and security controls and wrap it all up with a summary and exam review.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1. Welcome to security engineering.
So, as our modern societies rely more and more on complex software to function, we're talking everything from national power grids to the global financial system, our engineering disciplines absolutely must evolve to protect these invaluable assets. To really understand security engineering, we have to look at the historical context. Pre-1990s, if a system crashed, it was usually just because a programmer made an honest mistake, an accidental bug. But post-1990s, with the absolute explosion of the internet, suddenly our systems are exposed to the entire world. We aren't just fixing our own mistakes anymore, we're actively defending against malicious, highly skilled attackers who are constantly probing our networks for weaknesses. Take a second to let that contrast really sink in. We moved from a world of accidental failure to one of deliberate, intelligent attack.
Moving right along to Section 2, the CIA security triad.
So, if we're defending against these intelligent attackers, what exactly are we trying to protect? Well, this brings us to the 3 core pillars of security, collectively known as the CIA triad. This is a massive focus for your exam, so definitely take some careful notes here. The first pillar, the C, stands for confidentiality. This is really all about keeping data secret. By definition, it's ensuring that information is not disclosed or made accessible to unauthorized people or programs. A classic real-world example of this would be an attacker breaking into an e-commerce database to steal credit card numbers. If that data gets exposed to an unauthorized party, the system's confidentiality has completely failed.
Now, the second pillar, the I, stands for integrity. Integrity is about ensuring that the information in a system isn't damaged or corrupted, keeping it absolutely reliable and accurate. So, the crucial point here is, even if an attacker doesn't actually steal your data, simply tampering with it is highly destructive. Imagine a malicious worm that silently deletes or alters financial records inside a banking system. The data hasn't necessarily been leaked to the public, but it can no longer be trusted, and that is a catastrophic failure of integrity.
And the final pillar, the A, stands for availability. This means ensuring that access to a system or its data is consistently maintained for authorized users. You see, you could have perfectly secret and perfectly accurate data, but if nobody can actually log in to see it, the system is basically useless. Think of a denial-of-service attack, where an attacker just overloads a server with fake traffic so legitimate users can't access the website. That completely breaks availability. So, just for a quick micro recap, confidentiality keeps it secret, integrity keeps it accurate, and availability keeps it running.
Next up, Section 3, 3 levels of security. Now that we know the 3 dimensions of security we're aiming for, how does an organization actually practically manage these defenses? Well, this brilliantly illustrates where our systems are vulnerable by examining the application system stack. At the very bottom of the stack, you have your computer hardware and your network. Right above that sits the operating system. Then comes your database management and middleware, moving up to reusable components, and finally, right at the very top, is the application itself. The big takeaway here is that security isn't just one single thing you plug in at the top. Vulnerabilities can occur at literally any of these interconnected layers.
Because that stack is so complex, organizations have to tackle security across 3 distinct levels. First up is infrastructure security. This is really the realm of your system administrators. They're securing the networks, patching the operating systems, and protecting those databases. Second is application security. This is what we do as software engineers, securing the actual software code being built so it doesn't have any loopholes. Finally, and please pay close attention here, we have operational security. This focuses entirely on managing human behavior and how the system is actually used day to day. I really want to heavily emphasize this. Operational security is almost always the weakest link. I mean, you can build a mathematically perfect, heavily encrypted application, but if a user writes their password on a sticky note or leaves their laptop unlocked at a coffee shop, well, your system is breached.
Which brings us to Section 4, Core Security Terminology.
Let's see how all this builds on our understanding so far. As software engineering students, it's super easy to get lost in all these abstract definitions. So let's ask ourselves this. How do these abstract security terms actually look in the real world of the MentCare patient system? If you recall, MentCare is that software system used by clinics to manage highly sensitive mental health records. Let's map the theory directly to a practical scenario.
Here's the first half of the core terminology you really need to internalize. An asset is simply something of value that has to be protected. In our MentCare example, the primary asset is those highly sensitive patient records. A vulnerability is a weakness in the system. For instance, if the MentCare system allows short, easily guessable passwords, that's a glaring vulnerability. Then we have a threat, which is a potential danger to that asset. In this case, the threat is the possibility of an attacker actually sitting down and trying to guess those weak passwords.
Continuing with our terminology, an attack is the actual exploitation of a vulnerability. So the threat becomes an attack the moment a hacker successfully logs in using that guessed password. Next is a control. This is a protective measure designed to reduce a vulnerability. For example, enforcing a strict 12-character password policy across the board. Finally, exposure is the potential damage caused if the attack succeeds. We're talking severe financial loss, massive lawsuits, and a completely ruined reputation for the clinic. I want to stress this right now. Matching these exact terms to real-world scenarios is a major exam focus, so definitely make sure you can confidently do this.
To really cement this, let's narrate this textbook example step by step, almost like a mini story. Step 1. The MentCare system has a vulnerability. It allows a weak password policy. Step 2. A criminal decides to exploit human behavior. And hey, that's operational security failing right there. They pose as a concerned relative at the clinic to gather personal information about the staff. Step 3. Armed with this social engineering data, the attacker guesses a nurse's password. Maybe it's just their child's name. That right there is the attack exploiting the vulnerability. Step 4. The exposure. The system is breached and the criminal accesses a famous sports star's mental health records to blackmail them. This perfectly illustrates exactly how a technical vulnerability combined with an operational failure leads to a devastating exposure.
All right, let's move into Section 5, Threats and Security Controls. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is how we systematically categorize the chaos of cyber attacks into 4 clear buckets. First is interception. This is unauthorized access to an asset, kind of like someone silently copying a patient's medical file without anyone knowing. Second is interruption. This is making a system unavailable, such as crashing the hospital's main database so doctors literally can't view records. Third is modification. This involves secretly tampering with an asset, perhaps altering a patient's medication dosage right there in the system. And finally, fabrication. This is inserting entirely false information, like a hacker generating fake transactions to deposit money into their own bank account.
So, knowing all that, how do we actually fight back? Well, we use 3 main strategies for security controls. The first is vulnerability avoidance. The whole goal here is to design the system so that the problem simply cannot occur in the first place. Using strong encryption is avoidance. Even if data gets intercepted, it's completely unreadable. Some sensitive military systems take this even further, with air gaps, literally disconnecting the computers from the internet entirely. The second strategy is attack detection. This means building in monitoring systems that constantly scan for strange network activity to detect and neutralize attacks while they're in progress. And the third strategy is exposure limitation. Basically, if an attack succeeds, how do we limit the blast radius? We do this through automated backups to restore lost data, and even by taking out cybersecurity insurance policies to cover those financial losses.
Before we wrap up the main content, I really want to flag a very common misconception among software engineering students. People very often confuse safety with security. They are deeply related for sure, but they are fundamentally different. Safety deals with accidental failures. A safety hazard doesn't involve an intelligent adversary, it's just a mechanical glitch or a logic failure. Security, however, deals entirely with malicious intrusions. It involves an intelligent, human adversary who is actively and creatively probing your defenses, trying to learn exactly how your system responds so they can break it. Bottom line, security requires anticipating human malice.
And finally, Section 6, Summary and Exam Review.
All right, that concludes the main theoretical content for this section of Chapter 13. Speaking directly to you as students preparing for your assessments, let's lock in your key takeaways.
First, you must be able to confidently define the CIA Triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Second, you absolutely must be able to match the core security terminology, asset, vulnerability, threat, attack, control, and exposure to any real-world scenario we throw at you, just like we did with the MintCare system. And always remember this key underlying theme. Operational security, which relies on human behavior, is almost always the weakest link in any system. Getting these fundamentals down perfectly sets you up for our next topic, where we'll dive into writing specific security requirements.
I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought straight from the textbook. Just like safety, security is a negative property. You can never, ever definitively prove a software system is 100% secure. You can only prove that you haven't been hacked yet. It's a constant, ongoing arms race between engineers and adversaries. So keep that reality in the back of your mind as you design your future systems. Thanks so much for joining this explanator, and keep building securely.